Hey everyone! If this happened to you, would you confront the person directly or cut them out and move on? Comment confront or move on. And tell us why. Now, let's hear what happened. I was halfway through my soda when the double doors slammed open, like a bar fight was about to start. I didn't even have to look up. I knew that sound, that laugh. My brother Chris, loud, sloppy, always dragging chaos behind him like it was his job. He strolled in with his leather crew, boots thudding heavy on the floor, stinking of beer and cheap cigars. I shrank back into the corner booth, tugged my coat tighter. I shouldn't have come, but I had to hear Chief Everett speak. He was the only reason I'd shown my face at this first responder bash, a guy I once followed into burning forests without a second thought. It had been 8 years since anyone here saw me as anything other than the quiet lady who brought donuts and updated fleet schedules. I liked it that way. No questions, no explanations, just paperwork and protocol. But Chris saw me. Of course he did. He squinted through the crowd, grinning when he spotted me, then shouted across the room, "Well, damn, look who finally crawled out of the bunker." I glanced toward the stage. Everett was still talking, but people were already turning. Chris stomped over, arms out wide. "Didn't know you still showed up to these things." "What's the matter, Danielle? Miss playing firefighter?" I stood up, heart racing. "Not now, Chris." But that only fired him up. "Oh, come on. Everybody thinks you're some war hero or something. But she ain't one of us folks. She files paperwork, prints maps, probably never even put on gear." Laughter broke out in the back. Nervous at first, then mean. I felt my face go hot. "Enough. Sit down or get out." "Oh, tough now." "You weren't so tough when Dad died, were you?" The room dropped. That was a low blow, even for him. Quick note before we go further. Tell me in the comments what city or country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this reaches. I locked eyes with him. "You don't know what you're talking about." He leaned in close, breath sour. "Don't I? Then prove it. Prove you're one of them." I backed up, bumping the table. He turned to the crowd, voice booming. "You all see a hero? Or a fraud who hid in dispatch while the real ones bled?" People stared. Some I'd worked with for years. No one moved. I grabbed my coat and tried to slip past him. But I could feel it. Everything I'd buried was about to break loose, and I couldn't stop it. Chris grinned, cracked his knuckles, and whistled for his buddies. That's when I knew I wasn't walking out quiet. Not tonight. Chris whistled again, sharp and cocky, like he was about to put on a show. One of his biker buddies stepped forward. Big guy in a denim vest, face full of smug. I didn't know his name, but I'd seen him hanging around the local VFW, running his mouth like he earned something. He didn't. "Let's see the hero ink," he said, grinning as he reached for me. I shoved his hand off. "Touch me again and I'll break your nose. Then show us what you're hiding." He lunged before I could blink. First, he yanked my coat open, buttons popping, fabric tearing. Then with one brutal jerk, he tore through my shirt, ripped it right down the middle. Gasps shot through the room. Underneath, I was wearing a black tank top. Nothing fancy, but my shoulder was bare. And it was all there, plain as daylight. The old tattoo, Fire Search and Rescue Unit 17, faded but clear. And right below it, stretched across my collarbone and shoulder, were the burn scars, shiny, pink, twisted. I hadn't shown them in 8 years. The bar went dead silent. Music stopped. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Even glasses being lifted paused in the air. I locked eyes with Chris. His mouth was open, but no sound came out. For the first time in his damn life, he looked like he didn't know what to say. I pulled my coat back up around me with shaking hands. What was left of it anyway? Someone knocked over a stool trying to back away from the scene. Then a voice cut through the air, steady, loud, final. "Son, you just threatened my daughter." Every head turned to the stage. Chief Everett stood there, mic still in his hand, eyes locked on Chris like a storm just dropped inside the bar. Nobody moved. He stepped off the stage like he had all the time in the world. No rush, no panic. He crossed the floor while Chris stood frozen in place, trying to figure out how the hell the room flipped so fast. Everett stopped beside me. His presence was solid, like a wall I didn't know I needed until it was there. He looked at me first, just a glance, quiet and calm, then turned to Chris. "That was your sister." "You let him touch her like that?" Chris stammered. I didn't tell him to rip anything." "You brought him. You wound him up. You mocked her in front of everyone. I didn't know." "You didn't care." Chris tried to speak again, but Everett just raised his hand. Enough. You want to play outlaw? Fine. But in my house, you don't come after family. I could feel the heat behind my eyes, but I didn't cry. Not then. People were whispering now, shifting in their seats. The bartender stepped away from the counter. Some guy near the back started recording on his phone. Chris took a step back like he might run. But it was too late. He'd gone too far. One of his buddies muttered, "We should go." "No," Chris snapped. "She's faking." She's been sitting behind a desk for years. That tattoo could be fake. Everett turned, pulled something from his coat. It was a photo, worn and creased. He held it up. It was me, 15 years ago, helmet on, face blackened with soot, standing beside a collapsed rig in Montana. A real fire ground, not some staged photo op. I trained her. She ran into fires most of you would piss yourselves in. She earned her patch. And those scars? He looked straight at Chris. She got them pulling two guys out of a tunnel collapse while the flames were still rolling. Chris looked like he was shrinking by the second. She disappeared, Everett said, voice dropping just a bit, because the pain took everything. And still she rebuilt from the ground up. And you? He pointed at Chris with two fingers. You're nothing but a loud mouth in a vest who couldn't carry her gear. Dead silence. Then, slow and sharp, Everett turned to the guy who tore my shirt. You lay hands on a firefighter in uniform. Even retired, that's assault. The biker blinked. She ain't in uniform. She's wearing the scars. That's uniform enough. The guy backed off, both hands raised. Everett looked at me, voice low. You all right? I nodded, even though my hands were still trembling. Then let's get out of here. You don't owe them a damn thing. I took one last look at the bar, at the people who'd watched it all go down and said nothing, at Chris, standing there with his pride hanging by a thread. I didn't speak to him, didn't need to. I followed Everett out the front door and let it slam shut behind me. We stepped out into the cold, and for a second I just stood there, breathing like I'd run a mile. My coat hung half off my shoulder, torn at the seam. My heart still thudded like it was waiting for the next blow. Everett didn't say anything, just stood beside me with both hands in his jacket pockets, eyes on the dark parking lot. Behind us, the door didn't open. No one followed. He finally spoke. You don't have to stay invisible anymore. I looked at him, unsure if I was ready to hear what came next. He reached into his coat and pulled out something I hadn't seen in over a decade. A small wooden box, worn down at the corners, lid cracked just slightly. He held it out. What is this? I asked, not moving. He gave a tight smile. A promise. I hesitated, then took it. The box was heavier than I expected. The moment I opened it, the air changed. Inside was a melted ID tag, curled and blackened around the edges. My father's, Alan Mills, battalion chief. Beside it, folded carefully, was a small stained paper. I unfolded it with shaking fingers. It was a fireground map, hand-drawn, simple and fast. Arrows, notes, a few escape routes sketched out in thick pencil. My dad had drawn it the night he died, in the truck on the way to that warehouse call. I thought this was gone, I whispered. I pulled it from his coat before they rolled him out, Everett said. He told me to give it to you when the time was right. I stared at the map like it could pull me backward in time. I remembered that night too clearly. The knock on the door, my mother screaming, me standing in the hallway frozen, trying not to throw up. I don't know if I'm ready, I said. You weren't supposed to be, Everett replied. You asked for silence. I gave it. But this, he tapped the box. This was never mine to keep. I looked up at him. Why now? Because you let the world see you tonight, whether you meant to or not, and they saw the real you, not the desk job, not the ghost. I didn't know what to say. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. He continued, voice calm but sharp. You earned every scar on your skin. You've carried this weight alone long enough. If tonight proved anything, it's that you still stand when everything else falls. The box creaked a little in my hands as I closed the lid. People are going to talk now, I muttered. Let them. Just don't let them rewrite it. I nodded, but my mind was a blur. Everett glanced back toward the door. Your brother's not done causing damage, but you don't have to carry his wreckage anymore. I held the box close to my chest. It felt solid, final. He knew what that tag meant, I said. Yeah, Everett replied. He just didn't think you'd still have the guts to wear it. The wind picked up, blowing my coat sleeve across the old scar. I didn't pull it back down this time. Everett stepped off the curb, ready to leave. You riding with me? He asked. I looked back at the bar, then at the box in my hands. Yeah, I said. I am. We drove in silence for a while, headlights cutting through the dark back roads north of town. I held the box in my lap like it might fall apart if I let go, but my mind wasn't in that truck. It was somewhere else entirely. I was 14 again. Sitting on the living room floor in sweatpants and a Garfield t-shirt, math book open but ignored. The house smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner. Mom was pacing the kitchen. Chris was out somewhere, probably sneaking beer with his dropout buddies. Then came the knock. Firm, steady. Just once. I knew. Mom answered the door, but it was me who stepped forward. Chief Everett was standing there in uniform, face so tight I almost didn't recognize him. His hands were blackened. His helmet was tucked under one arm. He looked at me, not Mom, not past me, right at me. He held out a small object, wrapped in gauze and soot-stained cloth. I remember unwrapping it with fingers I couldn't feel. It was the melted tag. Your dad saved 3 men going back in, Everett said. Roof gave way before the 4th. Mom screamed. She collapsed against the wall, sobbing so loud I thought my ears would burst. I didn't move. I just stared at that warped tag until the metal burned cold into my skin. Everett crouched down to my level. Danielle, look at me. I did, because I couldn't do anything else. If you ever follow him in, make sure it's your call. Not anyone else's, not the fire, not the badge. You understand? I nodded, even though I didn't. But I did later, because years passed, and one day I woke up and joined the Wildland unit. Not because someone told me to, not because Dad had, because I needed to know what it felt like. I needed to stand in the same hell and see if I'd flinch. I didn't. I did 2 full seasons, mostly Colorado and eastern Utah. I cut lines, pulled hose, flew in on rotor with nothing but a Pulaski and a radio. I watched men twice my size collapse from heat while I kept pushing. I wanted to stop carrying my dad's legacy in my hands and feel it in my bones. The crew respected me. Nobody gave me special treatment. I didn't ask for it. Then came Nevada. We were in the middle of a burnover, out near the Sheldon Wildlife Refuge. Wind changed fast, real fast. There was an old shack we were using for cover, barely held together with nails and prayers. I heard the call on the radio. One of our rookies didn't make the turn. He was trapped behind the ridgeline. I didn't think. I just moved. I got to him, pulled him out, but the shack collapsed on my way back. 2nd-degree burns on my back and shoulder. 3rd-degree on my left side. Collapsed lung. Broken ribs. I coded twice in the bird. I woke up in a Reno hospital 3 days later, tied to wires and tubes, body lit up like a struck match. Everett was sitting in the corner, reading a dog-eared paperback and pretending he hadn't been waiting. He said, "Well, damn, you really did it." I couldn't speak, just nodded. They grounded me after that. Doctors, brass, the department, everyone had their reasons. I didn't fight it. Everett made a call and had me transferred to logistics in northern Colorado. Said it was clean work. Said they'd give me space. I asked for silence. He gave it. And for 8 years, not a word about Wildland. Not a whisper about search and rescue. No stories, no questions. Just schedules, radios, and fleet maintenance. Until tonight. Until the coat got ripped open. Until the scars saw the light. Until Everett handed me that box. I looked out the truck window at the passing trees, dark and quiet and still. I hadn't followed my dad into that fire. I walked in on my own. We pulled up outside my place, and I was halfway to the door when Everett's phone buzzed. He checked the screen and gave a quiet grunt. "They're already there." "Who?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me with that same steady face he'd worn the night Dad died. I knew. Back at the bar, the last stragglers were heading out, murmuring, glancing back like they were leaving a wreck scene. 2 plainclothes guys stood near the jukebox, talking to the bartender. Short sleeves, clean shoes, radio bulges on their belts. They spotted Chris right away. One pointed. The other nodded. No cuffs, no shouting. They just walked over and said something I couldn't hear. Chris's whole body stiffened. One of the bikers stepped up, but the second agent flashed a badge without blinking. The guy backed off quick. Chris didn't fight, just looked around like maybe someone would stop it. No one did. They walked him outside, calm as anything. Chris tried to hold on to his ego, straightening his vest like he wasn't being quietly dismantled in front of the same people he'd just been performing for. I didn't go out to watch. Just stood near the busted booth with my arms crossed, watching through the window. I already knew why they were there. Couple years back, I was doing routine inventory flag checks, just the usual scan for missing radios, bunker gear, expired meds. Chris's name had popped up next to a gear locker from a volunteer unit that shut down 6 months prior. Didn't make sense. He wasn't assigned there. I dug deeper. Found a report, internal, unsigned, accusing him of selling off department equipment for cash. Chainsaws, comms gear, even a couple department-branded turnout coats. It hadn't been investigated. Slipped through a quiet restructure. I had the clearance to flag it, wipe it. So I did. I convinced myself I was protecting family. He was reckless, sure, but not evil. Just stuck, trying to be someone, same as me. But he didn't stop. He started attaching himself to departments he never trained with, showing up to parades in uniform pieces he didn't earn, telling people he served with Wildland back in the day. He used my last name like a resume, and every time I told myself I'd deal with it later, something in me said, he's your brother. He's all you've got left. But after tonight, the ripping, the shouting, the humiliation, I knew. Chris didn't just lie. He built himself on lies. And I was the one holding up the foundation every time I stayed silent. Everett stepped back inside, slow and quiet. "It's done," he said. I didn't ask how. Didn't need the details. "Did you know?" I asked. He looked me in the eye. "Suspected, but I don't move on rumors. You taught me that." I almost laughed. Guess I taught someone something. "You taught me that protecting someone out of guilt isn't the same as loving them." That one hit hard. The bartender walked over with my half-ripped coat, folded awkwardly. "Didn't want this ending up on someone's Instagram," he said. "You want a drink?" "No," I said. "I've got what I came for." He nodded and walked off. Everett held the door open for me. As I stepped through, I paused and looked back at the bar, at the broken booth. The silence. "He'll call," I said. "Eventually." "Yeah," Everett replied, "but you don't owe him an answer." We left it there. We were halfway across the lot when I heard boots scuff behind us. "Danielle, wait up." Everett turned fast, but I raised a hand. "I got it." The guy was hanging back near the curb, hands shoved deep in his pockets. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Thick beard, biker vest, ball cap low over his eyes. I recognized him, one of Chris's regulars. Quiet, never said much. Reggie something. He approached slow, like he wasn't sure if I'd swing on him. "Look," he started, voice low. "I ain't here to defend anything." "Good," I said flat. "Because there's nothing to defend." He nodded, eyes on the ground. "I froze. When your shirt got ripped, I saw it happen, and I just locked up. Like I was watching it on a screen. I didn't say anything. I should have stepped in. I know that. I was just..." He stopped, took a breath. "I panicked, and I hate that I did." "Yeah," I said. "I hate it too." Reggie swallowed hard, then reached into the inside pocket of his vest, pulled out a small silver object and held it out in his palm. It was a department tag, worn but clean, slight bend in one corner, issued out of Sacramento Fire. His name was etched on the back, Reggie D. Walsh. He didn't try to hand it to me, just held it there. "I used to run EMS Squad 41, East Side. 10 years ago, we pulled up on a wreck outside Citrus Heights. Kid was already gone, but the dad was screaming for us to try anyway. I worked him over hard. Cracked ribs, blew a bag, all of it. Nothing." He looked up at me. "I lost it after that. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't run another call. I bailed before my own crew even knew I was done. And I never wore this tag again." I looked at it, then back at him. "So, you joined up with guys like Chris instead?" He gave a tight nod. It felt easier. Nobody expects anything from you when you're just another face in a biker bar. Except when they need someone to help tear a woman's shirt off in public. His mouth twitched. "Yeah, that night, it broke something. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I still stood there. I can't unsee that. Can't take it back." He paused, held the tag closer. "But I don't want to be that guy. Not anymore." I stared at him for a second. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," he said fast. "Just needed to say it to someone who'd get it. You don't gotta forgive me. I just want to figure out how to wear this again." For real, I looked at the tag one more time, then stepped forward, pressed my fingers to the metal for a second, just enough to feel the weight. You don't need my permission, I said. But if you want to earn that back, you start by walking away from those men. Every last one of them. I already told them I'm out, he said. They laughed, called me soft, said I just wanted to impress you. I almost rolled my eyes. This isn't about me, Reggie. I know. That's why I came alone. He took a slow breath. I want to protect people again. Even if I never put on a uniform, I want to live like someone who still can. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just nodded. That's the first step. Reggie tucked the tag back in his vest, this time like it meant something. Then he turned and walked the other way, not toward a bike, but down the sidewalk, past the bar, into the dark. I stood there a second longer, the air sharp in my chest. It hit me then. This wasn't just about my story. There were others still carrying pieces of their old lives, waiting for someone to tell them it's not too late. And maybe that was part of my job now, too. The video hit the internet less than 24 hours later. Someone in the bar had been recording, started right as Chris dared me to prove I was one of them, caught every second of the coat rip, the tattoo, the scars. You could even hear Everett's voice clear as hell. Son, you just threatened my daughter. It blew up fast. By that Monday, my face was all over the news feeds. Some idiot clipped the moment and titled it, Tattooed Firefighter Outed by Brother. Catchy, dramatic, and just enough to rile up every corner of the internet. People started choosing sides. Half the comments called me a hero. The other half? Frauds and armchair experts who'd never seen a flame hotter than a backyard grill. Where's her badge? Bet that tattoo's fake. Stolen valor. Sick of it, one guy even tagged my department, asking why a proven liar was still employed. Like I was a threat to public safety because I filed fleet maintenance reports. Chris got himself on a daytime talk show, not one of the classy ones either. Full studio audience, dramatic intro music, the whole circus. I watched just enough to see him sit there, arms crossed, saying I'd always made things up for attention. Claimed I never worked real rescue, said I stole a patch from one of Dad's old jackets and got it tattooed for clout. Clout? Like I went through skin grafts for followers. I shut the TV off and unplugged it from the wall. Chief Everett showed up at my office the next morning. No warning, just walked in like he owned the building, which technically he kinda did. Busy? He asked. I am now, I said, pointing at the stack of mail with my name on it, half of it hate. He didn't even glance at it. There's a recognition event this weekend. Small group. Private. No press. Just local fire, dispatch, medics. People who remember. I shook my head. No chance. Everett didn't budge. You'd be standing in your own name. Nothing more. I'm not interested in a damn stage. Then don't stand for the applause, he said. Stand so no liar can take your place. That shut me up. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. You're not the first one they've tried to erase, but you might be the first who can actually stop it. I looked at the stack of printed out tweets someone left on my chair, all of them ugly. You think showing up makes a difference? I asked. I think hiding doesn't. I didn't give him an answer. He just left the invite on my desk and walked out. 3 hours later, someone buzzed my phone. I picked up without looking. You really lit the place on fire, sis, Chris's voice said. I froze. You watching the numbers? People love this stuff. I got an offer for a podcast. Might do a book. You're unbelievable. Come on, he said. It's not that serious. You always wanted to disappear, right? I'm just doing the talking for both of us. You're doing it for yourself, he laughed. Fine, but you're not going to last out there once people see how empty your story really is. I hung up. Not rage, not sadness, just done. A day later, I drove out to a small hiking turnout past Glen Echo. No service, no cameras, just trees and wind. I sat in the truck with the wooden box in my lap, same way I had that night. Opened it again, held the melted ID tag, studied Dad's fireground map until I could trace it blind. Then I whispered one thing to myself like I needed to hear it out loud. He doesn't get the last word. When I got back, IRSVP'd yes. Not for the claps, not for a photo op, because when people twist the truth in public, someone has to show up to untangle it. Even if your voice shakes, even if you'd rather hide, even if it means standing on a stage with no badge, no turnout gear, and half the world still calling you a fraud. I'd stand anyway. Because I knew what I lived. The letter came on a Tuesday, plain white envelope, no return address, but the red stamp in the corner said Inmate Mail, Colorado Department of Corrections. I didn't need to open it to know who it was from. I almost tossed it in the shred pile. Almost. Instead, I took it home, laid it on the counter, and stared at it for 2 hours while spaghetti boiled and the dog barked at wind. Eventually, I tore it open. The paper was yellowed, like it had been folded and refolded too many times. Ink was smudged, maybe from sweat or maybe from him pressing too hard. But the handwriting, shaky or not, was still his. The way he looped his R's too tight, the crooked D's. Danielle. He started like we were just catching up, but it didn't take long to get to the real part. I used to hate you for joining. Not just jealous. Hate. You did what I was too scared to do. You walked into fire while I ran my mouth and drank through life like it owed me something. I sat down on the edge of the couch, reading slow, like it might change if I blinked too fast. That night Dad died. You didn't cry. Not in front of me. You held Mom like you were already twice your age. I remember thinking, damn, she's already stronger than I'll ever be. I never told you that. I never told you anything worth hearing. He wrote about the equipment he sold, said it started small, said he was broke, desperate, stupid. One excuse after another. But this time, they weren't framed like justifications. He owned it. I wore your name around like it earned me a pass, told people I served, built lies on top of lies until I couldn't tell what was true. But I knew you knew. I saw it in your face the night everything went down. My hands were still, calm. That surprised me. You covered for me years ago. I saw the logs. I saw how the report disappeared. You thought you were saving me, but you were just dragging my mess into your life. I never earned it. I didn't earn you. The page got lighter near the bottom, like his pen was running out or his hand had finally started shaking too much to keep pressure. I'm not asking for forgiveness. You don't owe me a damn thing, but I needed you to know. I saw it. I finally saw it. You were always the one who stood up when it mattered. You always carried what I ran from. You don't have to carry me anymore. That was the last line. No love, no your brother. Just his name scrawled small in the bottom right corner. Chris. I folded it once, then again, then slid it into the side drawer where I kept the wooden box. I didn't cry, didn't write back. But I placed the letter inside, next to the fireground map and the melted tag. The silence I'd carried for years wasn't empty anymore. It was full of what finally got said. A week after I filed the letter away, I found myself standing in front of the old station house on Grant Street, the one with the brick walls and crooked gutters, retired from service back in '09. It had been turned into a community center, exercise room, job board, blood drives on Saturdays. Mostly quiet now. I didn't come to lead anything. I'd had enough of stages and microphones and damn speeches. I just needed to hold space. I pitched the idea to Everett in a single sentence. What if we made room for the ones who don't talk? He didn't ask questions, just handed me the keys. So I started Second Watch. No sponsors, no press. Just a handwritten flyer tacked to the bulletin board by the coffee machine. Second Watch. Thursdays at 1900. No uniforms, no stories required. Just show up. The first night, 2 people came. A retired dispatcher named Nora, who carried the same thermos she had on the job, and a guy named Pete, who used to drive water tenders in Larimer County before his knees gave out. We sat in a circle of folding chairs, no agenda, no rank, just steam rising from old mugs and stories told like slow drips from a leaky pipe. By the 3rd week, there were 9 of us. I kept working logistics during the day. Fuel counts, vendor calls, clean inventory lines. I liked it. It was predictable. Clean. The numbers didn't lie or bleed or beg for one more minute. But at night, I unlocked the station doors and waited. Sometimes no one said anything for the first 20 minutes. Sometimes someone cried 5 minutes in. We didn't do formal intros or speakers. No one stood. We just let the weight land where it needed to. The name mattered. Second Watch. Because that's what it felt like. A shift after the shift. A place for those still carrying the alarms in their heads even after the radios went silent. One night, a kid came in. Couldn't have been more than 19. Face blotchy, dog tag clutched in both hands like it might vanish if he let go. He sat down next to me, but didn't talk. After a while, he leaned in and asked, barely above a whisper, "Does it ever get easier?" I didn't pause, didn't try to give some perfect answer. I said, not easier, just clearer. He nodded like that made more sense than anything he'd heard in weeks. I didn't wear my patch anymore, took it off my old jacket and boxed it up with everything else. Some part of me knew I'd never return to firegrounds, and I was finally okay with that. But I still served, not by hauling hose or flying into flames, not by shouting orders through smoke. I served by showing up, one person, one story, one Thursday at a time. Sometimes someone would bring photos. Sometimes they brought silence. Both were welcome. No one ever asked me what happened in Nevada. No one brought up the video, the fallout, the noise, and that's why it worked. It wasn't about fixing people, it was about seeing them, and if nothing else, I knew how to do that. I locked up after the Thursday group cleared out, lights low, chairs still scattered. But I didn't head home. Instead, I pulled the wooden box from my bag and walked it down the hall to the back room. The old gear locker turned memorial space. Station 7's wall was quiet tonight. No ceremony, no crowd. Just names, photos, folded flags, and the kind of stillness that made your throat tight. Dad's picture sat center left, black and white, helmet tilted back, soot on his jaw, half smiling like he'd just told someone to shut up and keep working. I reached up and hung his old ID tag on the tiny brass hook beneath his frame. The metal still felt warm from my palm. Even after all these years, it clicked against the wall with that familiar little sound, just like it used to on his chest. Then I unwrapped the map, the one he drew the night he died. I'd framed it the day after I got the letter from Chris. Simple wood, clear glass. Nothing fancy. I set it gently beside his photo, just under the small plaque that read, "We Remember." To the right was Chief Everett's frame. He looked younger in his photo, full gear, serious face, a radio clipped high on his vest. I never asked him who took that picture, but it had the same look all line of duty shots did. Frozen between two alarms, I adjusted the map one last time, then stepped back. Felt the weight of it all settle behind my ribs. I saw it through, Dad, I whispered. Nothing moved, but the air shifted, just enough to remind me I wasn't alone. The front door creaked open. Footsteps, light ones, hesitant. I didn't turn around. I heard the pause, the shuffle of boots on old tile, the way someone holds their breath when they're not sure they're supposed to be there. Then the chair scraped softly against the floor. Someone sat down, young, new to the weight, probably carrying something that didn't have words yet. I didn't ask, didn't speak. I walked to the counter, filled the pot, set out a clean mug. The room stayed silent, but it didn't feel empty, just full of the ones who kept showing up.